A post-Brexit trade deal has finally been agreed 4.5 years after the UK voted to leave the European Union. The Prime Minister says it will protect jobs, provide certainty for business and deliver on the promises made in the 2016 referendum, taking back control of the UK's laws and borders. After months of talks and frantic last-minute wrangling over fishing, negotiators finally reached agreement this afternoon with just a week to go before the deadline ends. The President of the European Commission, Ursula Von de Leyen, described it as a good and fair deal. She said she felt relieved and it was time to leave Brexit behind. Here's our political editor, Laura Kuenssberg, on a day of history.
Time is finally up. A deal at last agreed that Number 10 believes will pull power back to this building from Brussels. A vast trade and security agreement the Prime Minister and Brexiteers promised. Until a matter of hours ago, it wasn't guaranteed. But look, the optimist really did have something to cheer. His ubiquitous thumbs up, achievement, relief, written all over his face.
I'm very pleased to tell you this afternoon that we have completed the biggest trade deal yet, worth £660 billion a year, a comprehensive Canada-style free trade deal between the UK and the EU. And we've also today resolved a question that has bedeviled our politics for decades. And it is up to us all together as a newly and truly independent nation to realise the immensity of this moment and to make the most of it.
Can you tell the public honestly, where did the UK give the most ground and where did the EU compromise the most, do you think?
We wanted to make sure, for instance, that we got access to, got complete control of our fisheries from the get-go. The EU began with, I think, wanting a transition period of 14 years. We wanted 3 years. We've ended up at 5 years. I think that was a reasonable transition period.
The tally of losses and wins may take years to settle. Talks through the early hours in Brussels sustained by pizza, tangled over the specific quotas of different species of fish. But getting this far was never a question of just minor detail, but settling, or smudging perhaps, profound differences of view.
So we have finally found an agreement. It was a long and winding road, but we have got a good deal to show for it. It is fair, it is a balanced deal, and it is the right and responsible thing to do for both sides.
On both sides of the Channel, the agreement has to be approved by parliaments, but given the exhaustion with and enthusiasm for Brexit in the Commons, that's not likely to be a block. Even the Labour leader who fought the notion is likely to come on board.
When this deal comes before Parliament, Labour will accept it and vote for it. But let me be absolutely clear and say directly to the government, up against no deal, we accept this deal. But the consequences of it are yours, and yours alone. And we will hold you to account for it.
What's been achieved is a truly vast trade deal that will set a vital relationship for a long time to come. There will be some new barriers to doing business, but the UK will be free from European law, despite warnings at the start. It's genuinely a landmark moment in the country and the Tory party's tricky relationship with the European Union. And what's been avoided is potentially profound disruption and the political embarrassment of failing to agree. Yet within more than 1,000 pages of tightly written text could yet be some hidden pain. And the scales that will balance the cost and opportunity of Brexit won't be settled for many years to come. For the inhabitants of Number 10, this has been a long wait. Boris Johnson's tenure may be defined by what's grabbed and gained, and what's slipped from grasp. But the Prime Minister's reputation is the least of it. The very nature of the country poised to change. Laura Kuenssberg, BBC News, Westminster.
Our Europe editor, Katya Adler, is in Brussels. So time to move on, says Brussels. Can you sense the relief there now?
Well, the clock is no longer ticking. Those were pretty much the first words of Michel Barnier, the EU's chief negotiator. No more threats or fears of no deal. No more what was almost painful uncertainty between the two sides with this deal, which the European Commission says is fair for both sides. But, Sophie, didn't you notice that immense difference in tone in the two press conferences this afternoon? The Prime Minister sounding victorious, the President of the European Commission sounding sombre, defensive about the merits of the European Union and regretful about the UK leaving. Of course, for the Prime Minister, he sees Brexit, the 1st of January now, as almost like a rebirth of the UK. But for the EU, as we heard again from Finland's Europe Minister tonight, this was a kind of a damage limitation exercise. The European Union has lost a key member state. That was a slap in the face. So out of this deal, what the EU wanted was to protect its business interests when it comes to the UK, but not to make this deal so good that other member states might be tempted to leave the bloc as well. Of course, what the two sides wanted to do was to have an advantageous deal. We'll find the details of that in the coming days. We've got the representatives of the 27 countries meeting here on Christmas Day with Michel Barnier to work out and to ratify this deal in the individual member countries. But this will not be the end of the EU-UK conversation, Sophie, because just for an example, ours is essentially a service-based economy, and this deal, even though it married the priorities for both sides, sovereignty on behalf of our government, protecting the single market on behalf of the EU, it doesn't really deal with services at all.
Our Europe editor, Katya Adler, in Brussels. Thank you. Well, business leaders have welcomed the trade deal, saying it has come as a huge relief, despite being so late in the day. The details of the 1,500-page document will be pored over in days to come. But this deal finally gives businesses some certainty, despite big challenges ahead with just days to go before the transition period ends. Here's our business editor, Simon Jack.
It's been tough to land, but after a titanic struggle over fish, which will see domestic boats get 25% more of the UK waters catch over the next 5 years, a trade deal was netted. A perfect last-minute Christmas present for businesses that feared the damaging consequences of cutting the UK adrift from the EU.
This is a huge relief to British industry. Our economy has suffered an awful lot of damage this year, and we couldn't really take any more. So, yes, we've still to see the details, but I think a tariff and quota-free deal means that our factories and farmers stay in business.
Without a deal, cheddar cheese from the UK could have faced tariffs of up to 50%. Wyke Farms exports 4,000 tonnes of it to the EU every year.
We're hugely relieved that we've got certainty now. We know we've got tariff-free access to Europe. The tariffs for our business at Wyke Farms would have amounted to over £4 million per year.
But there is an elephant not in the room and barely mentioned in the deal, which is services. Finance alone is 100 times more economically important than fishing. And there is no automatic access to a market that to the UK was worth £35 billion last year alone. Any champagne should probably stay on ice. UK traders will still need to complete over 200 million additional customs forms at a cost of over £7 billion a year. Haulage companies warn many businesses are not ready for this new normal. A huge relief, yes, but celebration will and must quickly give way to preparation for a very different future.
And Simon is with me now. So certainty, relief, but will this be enough to restore confidence?
Well, hopefully. I mean, this feels like a drawn-out piece of medieval torture over the last few months. But actually, in trade terms, this has gone at lightning speed. And those thousands of pages, or the 1,500 pages, things will emerge. We'll be unpacking this for days, weeks, probably for years to come. And there will be unexpected things to come out of it. There is very little doubt there will be some economic penalty by putting additional friction in the way of our trading with our biggest trading partner. But the importance that fishing assumed over something like finance tells you that this wasn't a purely economic calculation. There were powerful political forces and instincts at work. But here we are at an historic moment. So the question is, what happens now? You've heard me say that businesses hate uncertainty, that old cliche. And it's a cliche because it's true. They do hate uncertainty. And the hope now is that where some of this uncertainty ends, things like confidence, planning, investment can now start. That's the hope as we embark on a very different future with the EU at a very historic moment.
Our business editor, Simon Jack, thank you. Well, the full text of the agreement hasn't been released yet, though some details are beginning to emerge. Our deputy political editor, Vicki Young, looks at what we know about it so far.
After months of talks, a deal's been done which will shape a new relationship between the UK and the EU. The UK is no longer in the single market or customs union, which means there will be restrictions on trade that we didn't have before. The deal agrees that there won't be quotas or taxes known as tariffs on wholly British goods exported to the EU and vice versa, but there will be new paperwork and checks.
Now, what about resolving disputes and making sure that both sides stick to the rules? Well, they have agreed not to water down the existing standards on things like the environment and workers' rights. But if one side wants to change that in the future or complain about how it's all working, they can go to an independent panel.
Special arrangements have already been agreed for Northern Ireland. It stays in the EU single market for goods and will continue to enforce EU customs rules at its ports. When it comes to security and policing, there will still be substantial cooperation, but the UK will lose access to some databases which could make investigations more difficult.
Of course, there are many things changing which aren't part of this trade deal. Payments to the EU will be vastly reduced and only go towards specific projects. And the free movement of people will end. A new immigration system comes into force at the beginning of January.
When it comes to holidays, visas won't be required when we travel to EU countries, but visits will be limited to 90 days in any 6-month period. British drivers won't need extra documents and can continue to use their UK driving licences. European health insurance cards, which guarantee medical care for travellers, will be valid until their expiry date and will be replaced by a similar scheme. The trade deal now needs to be approved by both sides. MPs will vote on the legislation on December the 30th. The next chapter in our relationship with the rest of Europe is about to begin. Vicki Young, BBC News, Westminster.
So what's been the reaction across the UK? We'll be hearing from our Scotland correspondent James Cook in Glasgow, our Wales correspondent Tomos Morgan in Cardiff. But first, here's our Ireland correspondent Emma Vardy from Stormont.
Just think back, the Brexit process was so seismic for the island of Ireland because it threw up all those questions over what to do about the Irish land border, and it reminded everyone of the troubled history of this place. But now many issues which once seemed unresolvable, there are now agreements on, and Northern Ireland enters this new era where doing trade here will be different from the rest of the UK, those special arrangements in order to keep the Irish land border invisible. Now, the trade deal has been welcomed here. It is likely to make some of those special arrangements for Northern Ireland easier to carry out in future, and it will bring great relief in the Irish Republic, where many people's livelihoods, particularly in the food industry, depended on there being a deal for the future of trade between our two islands.
Well, most of the reaction in Scotland so far has focused on fish and chips, or to be precise, seed potatoes. That's the type that farmers grow, not the type that you and I will hopefully roast tomorrow. This deal appears to prohibit their export from Great Britain into Northern Ireland or the European Union. Scottish farmers say that's a blow, although they say that avoiding a no deal has been good news. The First Minister of Scotland says that the deal is disastrous and that Brexit itself is disastrous. The Prime Minister, though, when it comes to fishing, insists that this is a great deal. Now, many people in Scotland's coastal communities voted for Brexit because they thought it would mean them taking back control of their waters. If they feel that hasn't happened, though, this could damage the Conservatives here. And overall, this isn't just about food, it's not just about trade, it's about politics. A significant percentage of people in Scotland, a big majority, voted against Brexit, and there's no doubt that it's breathed life into the campaign for independence.
Any deal is better than no deal, but this will still be a difficult deal for Wales, a thin deal, and not the deal that we were promised. Those are the words from the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, in response to this afternoon's announcement. Now, one of the reasons it was so important that Wales and the UK got this trade deal was because a higher percentage of Wales's exports goes to the EU compared to the UK average, 10% more. And when it comes to things like Welsh lamb and fish, they top around 90% going to countries within the EU. The First Minister has written to the presiding officer calling for the Welsh Parliament to be recalled next week so they can scrutinise this new trade deal. That will hopefully be done around Wednesday. So even though there is some concern around the specifics of this deal, it's still a better deal, Mark Drakeford said, than the no-deal scenario.
Tomos Morgan there in Cardiff.